Leading our bulletin this hour, the Constitutional Court has heard the decision to refer a presidential impeachment motion to the Impeachment Committee is the kind of matter which must be determined by the National Assembly itself.
And that should the court order the EFF's bid to have the rules which govern impeachment of a president amended in order to guard against it being open to abuse, it would result in one arm of the state, the Judiciary, dictating to the other, the legislative body, that it should accept the decision of a non-member, that is an independent panel, on whether the president has a case to answer.
Now, this is in response to the EFF's contention that Rule 129 is impermissible, vague and open to abuse.
Counsel, on behalf of the National Assembly and the Speaker, however, argues that the remedy lies not in invalidating the rule, but in the remedies afforded by our law for abuses of public power.
Two fundamental difficulties with the first challenge, the no discretion or automatic transmissibility challenge. The first concerns the principle of separation of powers in the Constitution, and the second concerns the conferral on the National Assembly by Section 57(1)(a) of the Constitution of the authority to determine and control its internal arrangements, and specifically how that has been interpreted and applied by this court in judgments relating to the Assembly's obligations under related provisions, sections 42(3) and 55(2)(a) of the Constitution, and also obviously EFF 2, section 89(1) of the Constitution. As the court will have appreciated or will know, that both the ground of attack, this first ground of attack, and the remedy that the applicants are seeking will shift away from the Assembly to the panel the power to decide whether a motion for impeachment of the President should be referred to the Impeachment Committee. And with the greatest of respect, we submit that if the court orders this shift, that will infringe the constitutional separation of powers of the judicial and legislative branches of the government. Because the result would then be this court, our highest judicial body, dictating to our highest legislative body that the latter must accept the opinion and the decision of outsiders to the NA, in other words, non-members of the NA, on whether the President has a case to answer, in other words, whether there should be an impeachment trial.
So while the Constitutional Court, as you saw there earlier, is hearing this particular Phala Phala saga, let's take you back to the genesis of this matter. We'll take you to February 2020. Remember, this is the 9th of February, where we understand that a large sum of foreign currency is then stolen from the president's Phala Phala wildlife farm in Limpopo, and of course believed to have been hidden in various pieces of furniture. But it's not up until June 2020 that former state security agencies DG Arthur Fraser then lays criminal charges against the president. The presidency also confirming the burglary, but while former public protector advocate Busuam Kobane also undertakes then to investigate this particular matter, but then she's soon suspended. So while the storm is brewing as well, we then see that there is then an auction at the president's Phala Phala farm, which also of course set a whole lot of tongues wagging, as a number of people were wondering that why is an auction then being held just amid this particular storm. So at the same time, you then look to the following month. This is July the 18th of the same year in 2022, President Cyril Ramaphosa misses the deadline. Remember, the former public protector advocate Busuam Kobane had sent him 31 questions. He misses the deadline to then answer those questions, but he manages to answer these questions just before July wraps up. And remember, at the same time, when it comes to the following month, the 30th of August 2022, who can forget the chaos that ensued in Parliament? This is when various opposition parties were demanding answers from the president, who was there to answer questions from the parliamentarians. And in part, you'd remember UDM leader, for example, Bantu Olomisa, saying that he thought that the president would at least use this opportunity to assure the country that he has not broken any law at all, but The president saying that he knows that there's a great deal of interest in his answers. He doesn't want to appear as if he doesn't want to answer the questions or be held accountable, but he wants to ensure that all various arms of, in fact, government, the agencies that we're investigating, are then given the space to be able to do their work. And this refusal to answer this particular question then led to chaos in the National Assembly. And remember then, on the 9th of September 2022, we then see opposition parties staging a protest outside the offices of the Public Protector, demanding that the Public Protector needs to release the investigations of that particular office when it comes to this particular matter. 14th of September 2022, we then see former National Assembly Speaker Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula announces then that she is now authorizing this independent panel to probe this particular saga in order to get to the bottom of what happened here. 7th of November the same year, the president confirms that his submissions to the panel, and then later on that month, the independent panel reports states that the president has a case to answer when it comes to the Phala Phala matter. And then this is the moment that a number of political parties were wondering what is going to be at play here, given what has been said by this independent panel report. And remember, at the same time, you then are seeing around the fact that a number of opposition parties were looking to the ANC to see how it's going to vote in the National Assembly when it comes to this particular report. The ANC then using its majority to ensure that this report, in fact, is not adopted. Then, June 30th, 2023, Acting Public Protector Koleka Gcaleka clears the president, as well as the South African Reserve Bank, clear the president of any wrongdoing when it comes to the Phala Phala matter. Now, you then are looking at where things stand right now. The 26th of November 2024, 3 accused are in the robbery back in the Modimolle Regional Court in Limpopo. Accused number 1, Emmanuel David, being denied bail, of course, previously, as he is deemed a flight risk. The siblings there are also still with him there facing this particular matter. Katle Khonyoni has been watching that for us. But at the same time, you then see what is taking place in Johannesburg, that is in Braamfontein at the Constitutional Court, the EFF and the ATM, challenging the decision not to implement the Section 89 panel report, because they say they believe that this report needed to be implemented in order to ensure that there's accountability on this particular matter. And they have been marching through the streets of Johannesburg throughout the day in order to ensure that they are also making their voices heard, heading to the Constitutional Court and picketing even outside the court while arguments are taking place inside the courtroom. And Natasha Phiri, SABC News reporter, has been stationed outside the Constitutional Court where EFF supporters have gathered, and she's joining us live now. Natasha, we've just, of course, gone through the timeline of how we got to this particular matter. But then when you look at EFF members, for example, for them, the big question is accountability, because a number of them are talking about this very issue.
You're quite right. Like you've correctly cited it, that the big question and the big issue for them here is accountability. You would remember what the EFF leader, Julius Malema, had actually said earlier on at the Mary Fitzgerald Square, saying that what they did to former President Jacob Zuma, they will do to President Cyril Ramaphosa. And this is all about holding him to account. He needs to account for the Phala Phala saga. And EFF saying as long as the organization is around, they will be advocating for this very issue. But I'm actually joined by Usihle Lonzi, who was the EFF student command leader at some point. He's now a member of parliament, and he'll just be talking to us about the sentiments outside here. Sihle, thank you so much for joining us on SABC News. What do you think about the proceedings so far?
No, thank you very much, and thank you to your viewers. Look, we made a commitment to the people of South Africa, and we said to them, Phala Phala will never die. There is no country in the world with a decent democracy that would allow a state president, the #1 citizen, to hide dollars of foreign currency, of cash under the mattress, under the couches, and there's no accountability about that. So we are saying to the people of South Africa, there are no holy cows. If we did it with Jacob Zuma, we must do it with Ramaphosa. And we must test these courts to say they must not want to protect their favorites. The law remains the law, whether we're dealing with Jacob Zuma Zuma or who are dealing with Ramaphosa, who are holding him accountable. He has committed a crime and he must stand, and he must go stand his day in court.
Sihle, you also mentioned the former President Jacob Zuma. Earlier on, your leader and you yourself were singing songs against the MK party, saying that the MK party is actually working against the EFF.
Look, we have got no relationship with the MK party, and we've made that clear from the get-go. We work in Parliament on an issue-based. When we go to Parliament and there's an issue about giving jobs to our people, we're going to vote together. Even if the ANC comes with a progressive agenda, we'll vote together. But when we come outside on the streets, MK party remains a political organization that is contesting the EFF, and it's an opposition to the EFF. So when we speak about MKP, we treat them the same as we treat the DA, we treat them the same as we treat the ANC, we treat them the same as we treat any other opposition party in South Africa. We are in the interest of protecting the EFF. We are in the interest of pushing the agenda of economic freedom, which is championed by the EFF. We've got no friends in the MK party.
One would ask, do you feel threatened by them?
We don't feel threatened by the MKP. I think we've seen with what's been happening with the infiltration. Before, yes, because we wanted to extend the olive, branch to say perhaps we could work together as black parties. But we got to see that the old Tsotsi has not changed his stripes. He still remains an infiltrator. He wants to destroy the EFF so that he can inherit the numbers of the EFF. And we're never going to allow that. So we don't view them as a threat. We just invited them to our house. We were assisting them in Parliament. A lot of the parliamentarians of the MKP, they don't know business of Parliament. They've never been in Parliament. We've been in Parliament since 2014. We were helping them even with our researchers, but we got to see that we're inviting snakes into our house. So we're simply saying, guys, go about your business. We will go about our business. We don't see them as a threat at all.
Mr. Lonzi, as you head to the Third National People's Assembly, something that affects you as a young person, you look at your policies of organizational redesign. Now, what the paper proposes is that you do away with the EFF Student Command, of which you led, and you form a youth league. Talk us more through that, please.
Look, the discussion document, the spirit of the discussion document of the EFF is that the student movement on its own has been unable to reach out to the community. Students only represent a particular percentage of young people in South Africa. They are unemployed young people who are in the communities, who are in the villages, who are ekas in the townships. There are young people who are not in education and training. There are young people that graduate from institutions of higher learning and they don't find themselves being able to do any point of activism. So it's still up for debate. It's a broadening of the scope. The NPA may come back and say, rather, let's have both. It may come back and say, let's reconfigure it, let's do it differently. But it's a discussion we must have to say, how do we reach out to the youth that is outside of institutions of higher learning? Because the Student Command has done extremely well in ensuring that the student constituency comes out in their numbers, supports the EFF, and we saw that in May. But now we have to do more. We have to go to the community.
Mr. Lonzi, thank you so much for your time. Well, ladies in studio, those are sentiments there of Mr. Sihle Lonzi, who is the youngest parliamentarian from the EFF caucus. I think you're 26. Sorry for exposing your age. So these are the sentiments that are here outside. Of course, we do expect party leader Mr. Julius Malema to address the scores of EFF members after the court proceedings, of which my colleague Karima Paga is covering from the inside. With that said, it's back to you, studio.
All right, and Natasha, we'll catch up with you a little later on there, as here she says the EFF leader Julius Malema is expected to address the crowds. But there is another leg of this particular story, Mfundo.